Hello everyone, this is Mike from Dimensional Walking. And today I'm going to do part two of my three-part series on aliens and three people that were able to get inside their minds. Or let's put it this way, we're able to really truly understand why they're here, etc. So part one I did back, I guess it was a couple weeks ago, and that one was a really I thought it was a really good one. And anyways, this is part two, so we're gonna do part two, and this part two is about Steven Spielberg. And so Steven Spielberg, he started out when he was a child. He was very much into UFOs and studying, about aliens, etc. And this started in Phoenix, Arizona, in the 1950s. And of course, his interest bore some really wonderful fruits for him later in his life. Kind of started out with Star Wars with George Lucas, and that was kind of a fantasy thing, but it had aliens in it, and of course it didn't really deal with UFOs as far as the Earth goes, but it was out there. It was really cool. Most people really enjoyed it. I did. But then as time went on, uh, the next thing he did was in 1977 with Close Encounters of the Third Kind, and that was made primarily for an adult audience. Uh, but it's still portrayed, and in this time, since Star Wars was really more of a blood and guts and all this stuff, and didn't always look, these kind of strange non-human creatures were always good guys. They were actually pretty bad guys in many ways. Uh, but anyways, the bottom line was, in this next third encounters, close encounters of the third kind, he was portrayed as the aliens kind of being more of the good guys. In fact, very much at the very end, there's this, kind of coming together, etc. And I'll kind of go through a little bit about that in my thoughts. Uh, anyways, this particular the movie actually uh, talks about visitations. There's two characters in here. I think Roy and the other one was Julian. Uh, yeah, Julian. And they basically have had encounters of some visitations of some sort, and they're kind of confused, and just things are having they're having flashbacks. You know, Julian, she's drawing things that she saw in her dream. She thinks it's a dream. Reality, it probably was an abduction. And Roy, he's out there making sculptures of a some kind of a mound. He's making it out of potatoes. It's really crazy. In fact, the mound, it looks very much like Devil's Tower, which you may be some of you may know in Wyoming. There's a place called Devil's Tower, and that was actually, if you look at our thumbprint of this particular uh, part, it shows Devil's Tower on the thumbprint, which is a very beautiful place actually. But anyways, we'll talk a little bit more about Devil's Tower as I talk about this particular movie. Uh, anyways, the main star here is, of course, Richard Dreyfuss in this particular thing. And so they're traveling around, and he's having all these flashbacks of things in his past, and they're trying to reconcile this whole situation, kind of at two different paths, basically. So, anyways, the deal really is that it ends up after, I'm not going to tell you all the movie. I'm sure many of you have seen the movie, but what really happens, it ends up that they're in there is this encounter, basically, with the government and our characters in a place, which is actually Devil's Tower, or very close to the Devil's Tower in Wyoming, or at least that's the way it's depicted. Okay, let me stop for a minute here. This particular encounter is pretty fascinating, because over the years I have heard that there could have been at least one, maybe two of these similar encounters around the United States. There was one in the United States I know of, and there was one in Russia, which were very similar in many aspects, where there was this kind of encounter. UFOs came down, there was a government group, and they were back and forth with each other. And then, all the results, I don't know, but this same similar encounter probably has happened. Okay. And again, I got this from abductees and contactees, and I've got this information from government people, people that were in the government that told me some of this information. But anyways, going back to the movie. So anyways, they get there. Uh, Dreyfus and Julian get to this particular uh, place, and with the government there, and the UFOs are coming down. But what I wanted to tell you is, I believe this movie. Obviously, I think that Steven Spielberg has some inside information, because two things: lights and sound. Okay, they are very important, and this I can speak from a personal thing. They are very important for bringing UFOs possibly down to Earth, and maybe doing some communication with them. Okay, let me give you two examples. When probably back about 20 some years, 25 years ago, I used to go into the mountains, the Appalachian Mountains, and I used to bring a big spotlight. I think it was like a 1,000,000 watt spotlight, some kind of a huge spotlight. We had several batteries I had to attach it to. But we'd go way back in the Appalachian Mountains, a group of us, and we'd go up close to Grandfather Mountain, and we would spot using these Stephen Greer type protocols to actually spot UFOs. There was always a lot of UFOs in this area, and we used to spot them, meaning we used to do signaling and et cetera, and we would bring them down. We'd bring them close to us. Now, I'm not going to say we didn't have a close encounter of the third kind. We may have. We don't know. Maybe it happened in our sleep. But anyways, we were able to bring them from a distance, brought them in closer to us where we could actually see the ships. And that happened twice. 2 times we went there. A couple other times we did, nothing happened. But these 2 times are for sure. It was pretty amazing, to say the least. The next thing is sound. So I lived in Tucson, Arizona for about 3 years. And at that time, I had access. We had 5 or 6 crystal bowls, okay? And we used to play the crystal bowls, etc. And what happened was we'd be playing the bowls, and the dogs didn't like it. Animals don't like crystal bowls. So I've been staying away from crystal bowls, although I wish I could get back to them. Because what happened was we were playing the crystal bowls, and apparently a UFO came down over the house. Now, we didn't know about it when it happened, okay? Our neighbor told us. In fact, he told us months later as we were leaving. We were actually leaving. We started using the crystal bowls. We were leaving to move somewheres. And anyway, so he, just as we were leaving, I think a couple of days before, he came over and says, yeah, I'm sorry you're leaving, blah, 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 but I need to tell you something. I didn't want to say anything before. I'm not really into UFOs, but I saw a huge ship twice within the last few weeks come over your house. And I said, well, can you kind of tell me which days it was? And he kind of told me, and I said, Jesus, I'm thinking to myself, this is when we were playing the crystal bowls. And so that was pretty amazing. So what the bottom line was, I'm trying to tell you, lights and flashing lights and maybe a certain sequence and playing things like crystal bowls is a way in which you can make some communication with UFOs and with aliens. Now, that is the same thing at the very end of this movie. They did, if you remember. There's this kind of organ music, really cool music with lights flashing, and then the UFOs seem to open up, and the rest of the movie is the rest of the movie, right? So anyways, that was the important thing there. Then, as you know, that was a pretty positive ending, if you remember. And then the next movie he did, of course, is in 1982, which was the movie E.T. E.T. Come Home, or E.T. the Extraterrestrial. I think that was the actual name of it. And of course, that was the really very softer, very gentle side of these beings, etc. This was he's the main character. He's floating off with a bicycle, towards the aliens through it, and the little girl is, doing the Reese's Pieces things, etc. So it was really soft. It was very cute. It was more directed to children, even though adults I think enjoyed it. I know I did. Did give you a really interesting look at the possible, the way an alien could look, and I believe, E.T. he did look. He could have. There's been people that described some of the ones they've saw that look very similar to them. So anyways, that was on a very positive side, a very positive note, uh, and it was all good. It was all good, basically. Okay. Then we come to 19. No, I'm sorry. It was 2002. Then Steven Spielberg did a series called Taken. Okay. And this was a series, about Rod's three families moving through four generations, and I think was in the Roswell area. And this was not a happy series, really, if you really look at it. But I really believe that there was a lot of truth in this series. Okay, and this talked about, of course, their journeys, their interaction with the abductions and the contact, etc. But it did show a great deal of physical pain and emotional suffering. Okay, it really, really did, all the way through. The mother loses her child to the aliens at the end, and basically the aliens really got a lot of people very, very crazy. And I think there is a lot of people out there that get very, very crazy about being abducted and even having contacts. I think people can sit back and talk to other people that have it, and they can bring themselves down, and maybe they can realize there is some very positive things about abductions in many ways, uh, for future growth of the particular individual. Um, so I think Stephen was talking about uh, these very emotional things. He also talked about how people were confused emotionally in the movie Close Encounters of the Third Kind. There's a lot of confusion in that movie too, with the until the end, when it all kind of comes together, and there's a kind of a feeling all the dots are connected, etc. But in Taken, there is not that. At the end, I really believe it's still kind of left up to people, but it does bring the whole question out to the public, and I know he did that purposely. Um, so So I just want to say in conclusion here, I know the alien beings and abductions. I know alien beings and abductions are real, and I really believe when we're dealing with them, we have to be cautious. We really, really do, and we have to look at it again. I fall on this one thing in my life that's been so important. You have to be fearless. You really do. Any of these beings, you need not to show your fear. You need to be strong. You need to be forward. You need to be a powerful human. You really, really do. This is key to all of this. Uh, for your mind, for your commonness of your mind, you have to have fearlessness. Okay. Now, lastly, I just want to say one more thing about Steven Spielberg. And I basically get this what I'm going to tell you from hundreds of abductee interviews I've done over my long kind of career, I guess we'll call it. I guess a career usually we make money. I don't make any money at this. But anyways, and all I want to say is I'm quite certain that Steven Spielberg has been taken. So, anyways, I'm sure that's how he got some of these very creative ideas and why he did what he did in these various movies. And so I think he was very close. I think he really ended up understanding, or at least trying to understand, in the minds of aliens. Anyways, well, that's it. Hope you enjoyed, and we'll do a part 3. I think it'll be really interesting. And if you like us, please like us. We need your subscriptions. And if you want to send us a private email about any kind of encounters you may have had, you can send it to dimensionalwalking@gmail.com. And that's it. As Roy Rogers always said, happy trails until we meet again. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.